So today, the message that I have for you is, Lord, let us see as you see. Because God sees very differently than how we see. And I feel the closer that we can see like him, the better we're going to be in everything that we're trying to do. So, last week we discussed how God is going to draw and bring people into our lives, and they're going to make an impact in how we function. And as you guys are a part of these groups, one of the biggest impacts that we can have is making sure that we are showing compassion to every single person that is somehow connected to that group. And this group could include anything. So it could be the people that you work with, it could be the people that you're in school with, it could be people that you're connected to with like social functions that you go to. It doesn't matter what it is. There's a reason you're there, and there's a reason those people are there, and there's going to be interactions. And those interactions, it's very important that you stay compassionate and patient no matter what those interactions might be. As I said earlier, God sees things in a very different way than we do. And the reason that I say that, if you have your Bibles with you, if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, he actually says this to the prophet Samuel when he's about to anoint King David as the next upcoming king. And what I want you to notice here is that God notices the complete true person, not just what we see on the outside. I almost refer to that as the shell. You know, there's the inside of you that is the true you that God sees. And so we're in 1 Samuel chapter 16. Oh, did it pop up? Oh, yeah, sorry, verse 6. Yeah, verse 6. And so to give you some background, the king that they have is not doing very well. So God says, I'm rejecting him, and I'm going to choose somebody else. And what I want you to notice here is what God says to the prophet Samuel. When they arrived, this is all of a certain man's sons who might be chosen as king. Samuel saw Eliab, this is the oldest son, and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before me. But in verse 7, the Lord says to Samuel, do not consider his appearance, nor his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the hearts. The heart. You know, we are put together so uniquely. It's amazing how we're put together. The Lord, it says in Psalm 139, if you want to go to Psalm 139, this is a beautiful psalm. Great psalm for talking about how we were created for intention. Again, there's no accidental births. Yes, that child might accidentally somehow happen, but trust me, if God didn't want the child to be born, the child won't be born. Plain and simple. So, in my eyes, that's just how it works when it comes to our God. And so, in Psalm 139, starting in verse 13, it says here, for you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. 14, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that well. Now, I want you to really take that home today. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderfully made. How many times have we bought into the lie that we are not wonderfully made? Think about that. Each of you here, you are wonderfully made. And there's a specific reason you're the way that you are. And sometimes I feel like people are like, oh, you need to do things so different. Really? What if that's how God exactly wants you to be? Amen. You know, that's very important to keep that in mind. Continuing in Psalm 139, we're going to start in verse 1. And I want to focus on this because God knows us way better than we know ourselves. You would think that we would know ourselves super well, right? Well, think about the teenage years. My goodness, there's all kinds of times I was trying to figure out exactly who I was. That carried over into a young adulthood. And there's still times I'm discovering things about myself as an adult. You know, I just don't think that journey of discovery is ever completely finished with what God has you doing. So take a look at verse 1 here. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely. God's understanding of us, it's just complete, absolutely complete. But we don't have that read on each other. We just don't. You ever seen that movie, What Women Want? You ever seen that with Mel Gibson? I'm dating myself here. That's an older movie. But if you don't know the movie, it's pretty funny. But this guy can hear everything that a woman thinks. And it's hilarious, the different things that are going on. But what's interesting about these scriptures is it's being shown to us that God knows us even more intimately than that. I mean, he knows just that much about us. And I think that the reason Samuel is given this command, and I think it's a similar command to us today, is so that we have a better understanding of who it is that we're interacting with when we come into these different groups. That we should be trying to have a focus of, God, please help me to see them like you see them. Now think about that. If we're seeing them as God's seeing them, where he looks at the heart, we're going to look at that perfect person and think, fearfully and wonderfully made. Now that's not always easy. How many of you have those people in your life that just annoy you? I know, I've absolutely been there. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing people looking at spouses. Oh no. Trust me, Sarah here should be nodding along. But you're going to have those moments where there's just people in your life that you might find it difficult to really interact with them. And there's just times where you're looking like, oh, I really don't want to be around this person right now. But remember, if you're seeing them how God sees them, you know what I mean? You're just gonna view them differently, and that's gonna help what you're trying to do. It's so important that we recognize that, because we don't know that person's whole story. We might think we do. There's so many times we look at somebody and we see the way that they act and we're like, oh my goodness. And God forgive me, I've had this thought in my head. Idiot. I've thought that before. That's not good, but I've thought that when I've looked at people. Kane's laughing at me back there, Jackie. Guys, I'm just going to be real with you. This is who I am. I'm going to be honest, because I think that's so important when it comes to my faith walk, that you see I have the exact same struggles that you guys are going to have. And so there's times where I think that, and over time, God has definitely helped me with that. I feel that I do that less and less, but trust me, it's there. I may not see it, and my face may not say it, even though my face isn't always very good at hiding how I feel. I just know that there's times that's going on. But what if that's a person who's struggling with depression? Or what if that is a person who they have some terrible addictions that makes them feel terrible about themselves on a regular basis? We don't know their story. What if they were abused when they were younger? There are so many things that we just don't know about somebody. And in teaching, that was definitely something that I wasn't anticipating as much as I've seen. So I have kids share digital journals with me every year. And the things that they have shared with me, the pain, the hurt, it gives me a clearer picture into their life and why they might be so frustrated and why they might act out. And then it helps me to have a much more compassionate way of interacting with them. And I think that if we were to pray this way on a regular basis, Lord, help me to see them how you see them, especially if they've wronged you. We've all been there. I bet all of you right now are thinking of one person. I know I've been there. Especially if they've wronged you, and if you can see them the way God does, you're going to have a better way of doing that. There's been times where people have been so mad with me, and they'll say certain things to me, and so I will just look right at them and think, picture you're looking at Jesus. That, I can't tell you how much that helps me. I immediately calm down in my head, because I'm thinking, okay, if I'm truly looking at this person like Christ would, if I was imagining I was talking with Christ, I would be handling this very differently. And that has been such a blessing to me to do that. And it's important for us to be able to do that, because again, when we say that we're a follower of Christ, people are looking. They are, whether we like it or not. people are going to start judging. They're going to start expecting a certain way for you to act because you're a believer. And if they see you responding a certain way, they're real eager to jump on that right away. Oh, yep, there they go again, typical Christian, doing what they shouldn't do. When that happens, it's really important if you ever have those conversations. I'm flawed.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the best way to put it. I'm flawed, and I'm hoping to get better if I'm making that mistake. But for those of you that have these people in your life, remember, our ultimate command is to show love. Yeah. And if we can see people properly, I think that will help us to do that. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18 says, "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Ooh, look at that. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge. Oh, it hurts, right? I guess these are real things we struggle with. But love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I've already shared this with you. I love me a lot. That's just how it is. If I could do that, if we could do that with other people and have that mindset, how powerful does that become? 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God." And then 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 14. Very simple. And I love this verse. "Do everything in love." And I believe that's the big picture here. Looking at everybody as, yep, God made that person wonderfully, and I may not see it right now, but God, I know you're going to help me see it, and I'm going to try and show that person that they matter, that I love them. And that's my hope with my faith walk. I hope that all of you here that know me, because I see so many of you that I know, I hope my life says that to you. I really do. Because I know there's not always times where I've probably done that, but I really try to show you love, because that's what Christ does to us. And I want you to know that you matter to me, each of you that are here. A great example of, especially verse 19 and 18 in Leviticus, where love your neighbor as yourself. This was one of the commands that was given to the Israelites, that they were supposed to love everyone as they do themselves as a neighbor would. And a great story of this is the Good Samaritan. This is found in Luke chapter 10, I believe verse 25. Matthew, let's make sure that's right. Okay, I don't know if I have that one right, because I didn't have it in my notes. I have just verse 25. Yes, perfect. Okay, so just want to make so one time I had the wrong verse. It was bad. So I want to make sure I get that fixed. So the Good Samaritan story is a great story. It's so powerful here. And I want you to be thinking of just two categories here. Who's the hero? And who's maybe the villain? Hero, villain. Okay, I want you to think that way. Here we go. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself. Basically, I want to look fancy, Jesus. He already knew the answer to the question that he asked him. You ever had people like that in your life? So, let me tell you how great I am about this. So, notice how Jesus handles this, though. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And I love how Jesus responds here, because it's not what he was probably anticipating, this man. He knows the answer to the question originally, but he doesn't know what Jesus is about to say. Verse 30. In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to go down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other road. So to a Levite," and a Levite's also like a person ministering before the Lord, When he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other road. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you an extra expense you may have, or any extra expense you may have. Verse 36, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Oh, there's so much to break down here. So much to break down. So notice the individual that's the priest in this story, which would more than likely represent the people that he's connected to. That's the first thing I want you to notice. So this person who's an expert in the law, more than likely was connected to this priest group. And what ends up happening here is this person sees this man and he's like, no. And he decides he's just going to go a whole different, honestly, that's what he decides there. I'm not messing with this situation. I don't want to muddy my hands. I don't want to get down and dirty here trying to help this person, because that's what's going to happen. He's been beaten really badly. He's probably going to get blood all over him. He's probably going to have a hard time, helping him maybe. And we don't know what the priest was doing. We don't know if he was busy, but he passes. We know that. He decides, I'm not going to help this individual, right? So then the next person is the Levite, who's associated with public worship. And these people could be musicians. They might even be guardians, gatekeepers, temple officials, judges, even at times craftsmen for the Lord. And they do the same thing. So notice the people who are expected to be the ones helping are not. Oh, that's not good. So then we have a Samaritan. And you might be thinking, what's so bad about Samaritans? I don't even know what you're talking about with those. Well, when the kingdom of Israel broke up, there used to be a huge nation where it was 12 tribes. They ended up splitting, and the group that split, they set up their kingdom in Samaria. And what ended up happening is they ended up compromising, where they ended up worshiping idols. Then after that, they didn't follow other of God's rules, like making sure that they were supposed to marry just Jews. They ended up marrying Assyrians. When the walls of Jerusalem were being built after it had been burnt down, the Samaritans gave them a really hard time when it was happening. So there was a lot of cultural issues when it came to Samaritans and Jews. They fought against each other quite a bit. So the bitterness was pretty deep. But notice in this story, who's the hero? Right? If you look at this situation, the hero is the Samaritan, because he's the one who actually goes and does something. Right? And then if it is broken down and you had to choose who's the person that's the villain, of course it's the robbers. But where does that put the priest? Where does that put the Levite? The one who just watched and did absolutely nothing. Yikes. Right? I don't want my faith walk to be a walk known of not doing any action. I mean, I can't just be all talk. If we're all talk, people are going to see that, and then they're going to be like, why do I want to be like you? Why on earth would I want to be like that? Now, my question for you guys today, because the Samaritans are people that we typically they didn't deal with the Jews. Who might be in your life that's like a Samaritan, where you don't even want to interact with them? You see them and you're like, no. But yet, again, we don't know that whole story. Who could that be for you in your life? You know what I mean? Because that's someone that you need to more than likely try and still have that same focus of showing compassion to. Jesus talks about, even people who are unsaved have no problem being friendly to people they're friends with. So we should be having that mindset of how can we be different? You will definitely be different if you're going up to different people, especially ones that you've had conflict with, and suddenly you're showing them kindness. Suddenly you're trying to see them through God's eyes. that's going to radically change how you're seen. Isn't that awesome? I mean, that's going to lead to a transformation. And I know what some of you are thinking, but they've been really rude to me. Yeah, I get it. No. Like, I want to hit them with a pan rude. No, I really get it. You know, I understand. You're going to have people like that in your life that you really have had frustrations with. But I can guarantee you this. If you are really firm in your commitment, God will help you to get past that, whatever it is. I mean, there have been people that I've had in my life that I have not gotten along very well with, people that I've argued with really bad. And yet God found a way for us to find common ground and for us to resolve things and to be friendly with each other, get along with each other. And is that going to happen if I'm going to hold a grudge? No, right? You know, that's not going to happen here. And I'll close with this. When you're in these situations, you're lifesavers. I know we talked about that last week, but it's so true. Your example, your testimony is going to lead to other people that will then know Jesus because they met you. You are the example of love. You are the example of going out and helping. And I want you to picture some situations where that could be happening. So for example, if you're at work and there's people that are ridiculed, do you go along with the joke? Or do you just stand there? I have no problem at times just standing. I do. I have no problem doing that. Now, are there other times I go with the joke because I think it's funny? God forgive me, yes. Especially when I know the person and I know what the person's saying, and I'm like, oh, that's really funny, you know, and that's not good of me. Honestly, again, I'm preaching to myself with this. This is definitely something that I need to work on. But I want to make sure that when I'm doing that, I'm trying to laugh at things that are the right things. You know what I mean? Things that I know they're going to build people up versus tearing them down. And if you've ever been on that side of being bullied or feeling really left out, you know what I'm talking about. This registers all too well for you with what I'm sharing with you today. There was a young man, he was very bullied in high school. It was awful. This one person just targeted him every single day. And this person was a believer, and he was trying to live his faith walk as best as he could, but every day, one thing after another where, you know, they would ridicule him and do everything they could to bring this person down. And then they both happened to be going on a ski trip together. And as they're on the ski trip, his friends dare him, hey, I want you to go off this really dangerous area. I want you to see if you can ski it. Well, the other guy, the one that had been bullied, he was a pretty good skier. The other guy wasn't. And he's going out of control. Bad out of control. To where he's about to go off and die out of control. And so, what does the guy who loves Jesus do? He skis right in front, pivots himself. He's got his spokes into the ground as best as he can, braces for the impact, gets hit, and they both go off and die. Now imagine, what did that young man who bullied thought when he saw this is the guy who was trying to save me? What kind of legacy now do both have? You've got the one who was targeted, and his last act is the act of, I'm going to try and save you because I love you. Even though you've done this to me, I still love you. Wow. What a way to end, right? If you're going to go out, I hope I could do something like that if I'm going to have to go out, that I would give my life. Because that's what the Bible says. There's no greater love than for someone to give up their life for the person that they love. What an amazing person. Let's go ahead and bow our heads. Father, please help us to see people to help us see how you see. Help us to show people the proper love. If you're here today and you feel this pull on your heart, you can feel that you want something different. You're hearing what I'm talking about. You're hearing about this love. And I want to let you know that Jesus, he's like that skier, the one that put himself right in the way, saying, no, I'll do what I can to save you. If you would like to have that new start with him today, you've never accepted Jesus before in your life, all heads bowed, all eyes closed, the only person who will see is me, would you raise your hand if you want to have a commitment with Jesus